Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Wise Body Podcast, where we talk about eating disorder recovery and all things body. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hughes. I bring 20 years of experience as an eating disorder therapist, and I've worked with hundreds of clients to feel more empowered and connected to their body by tapping into the wisdom it holds. I'm so excited to keep learning with you as we navigate the windy path that is recovery. So let's get started. It is an honor and privilege to invite my next guest and friend, Kate Josephson, to the Wise Body Podcast. Kate Josephson is a licensed professional counselor and approved clinical supervisor who specializes in mindfulness-based eating disorder, trauma, and developmental trauma therapy in Boulder, Colorado. Kate has over a decade of experience in working with trauma from a somatic perspective and has studied many modalities, including EMDR, sensory motor psychotherapy, parts work, and mindfulness. She spent years working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, worked in an eating disorder treatment center, which is where I know her from, and has since moved into private practice. She also is a certified mindfulness instructor and 200-hour Kripalu yoga teacher, and has 2 other master's degrees in theater and environmental law and policy. Please welcome Kate Josephson. Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Wise Body. Today, I'm so excited to have a very special friend and guest, Kate Josephson, who is a therapist in private practice in Boulder, Colorado, where I just moved from about a year ago. So Kate and I met. We were trying to think about this. We think it was about 2018, 2019 at an eating disorder program in Boulder. Yeah, so we go back a little bit, and I guess we'll just dive right in, Kate, with hearing a little bit about your own career journey into becoming an eating disorder therapist. You have a really interesting story of how you got here. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit with our listeners how this all happened. Please tell us this great story.
Well, first of all, Sarah, I just want to say thanks for having me on. You are one of the best eating disorder therapists I know, and I always know I can come to you with questions, and it's an honor. So let me first say that.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you.
Thank you. How did I get here? Well, I was in the theater world for many years, and then something got lost there, and I wanted to change my careers. So I had a minor in psychology. I was just organically reading psychology books in my spare time. And so when I was about 30, I moved to this yoga center called Kripalu, and I was just super getting more in touch with moving my body and building insights and really just slowing down in a way I don't think I've ever let myself slow down before. And so I decided I really wanted to change my careers. It's kind of scary to change your career at 30. And I remember running with a friend. We were out there in the Berkshires where Kripalu is so beautiful. And she asked me, if you're 40 years old and you wake up and you're still doing what you're doing, how will you feel? And it just hit me. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to move into being a psychotherapist. So that was sort of the impetus to start applying and then getting my license. And then years later, it's been a decade actually since I've been a practicing therapist. So in my second career, which feels kind of amazing. And yeah, here I am. That's the short story. But I was in the theater before in New York City, great theater. And I just was I switched. Yeah.
Right. So I remember reading the article is it called Canvas Rebel?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were in a prominent theater, doing it in New York. And so, right. So sometimes when you feel this is the dream, this is where I've always wanted to be. And then you realize well, maybe not. That's a hard realization right there. Was that a hard time in your life, making that decision? Or did it feel really clear and maybe it developed into that? I don't know. What was that all like for you?
I was at this theater called the Public Theater in New York City, and I died for it. I loved it. I would have done anything for it. But I was so insecure in myself. No one would know it, or maybe they felt it, but I had my own stuff. And so I was working all these part-time gigs with them, and then I just couldn't make ends meet. And then finally there was this perfect opportunity that came up. And I basically told my boss to hire my coworker because I thought she would be better. And she was fabulous also, but it was like, I wasn't selling myself. I was like, oh, she's better than me for sure.
Wow.
And then I ended up going actually to another place to work in New York, and it didn't work out. And I was finally like, who am I in these prestigious roles? Or what am I doing if I don't like myself? If I don't believe in who I am, and like, who am I if I'm not just career of arts? So it was actually really painful. I had to unwind many, many years of an identity of feeling like I'm a theater person, die hard. And I just had to rethink my life, which is why I kind of paused it and moved to a yoga center where I lived in this life I worked and lived for free. And it was through there I started to understand, like, what am I missing? Who am I? Why don't I like myself? What's going on here? Because I don't want to be an older adult and hate myself, actually. And so that was sort of the beginning of moving inward and moving all of my awareness and attention into my inner work.
Wow.
Which, of course, led me to psychology. So I was like, this is the jam. I want to be here. Right. Yeah. So sometimes I always find like my work it has to mirror what I want to do in my career. So it was like this perfect coming together of like what I wanted to study deeply and a beautiful new career. And so I went back and did my master's degree in it.
Yeah. And there are some...
That's kind of a long...
No, yeah. It's a beautiful story, and I would devote the full podcast to it, and maybe we do, because it sounds like that was a lot of work, and you came to like this hard, beautiful truth, and you said like it was a painful process, but it sounds also beautiful, right? Like it almost mimics like therapy, right? It's like it can be like really hard and yet like wonderful and awakening all at once, right? It's like this messy process, and you allowed yourself, maybe because you felt in a safe place at Kripalu, like that's super cool. I admire you so much as a person, and I admire like this process that you went through, because I think it makes you like an amazing therapist, because you sort of lived through this very powerful transformation, if you will.
I actually do think like it wasn't just like, and then I went and did my master's and the sun came up. It was really hard. I was also in a tough relationship. There were so many things happening at the time. Like my identity was shifting. The self-work can be so beautiful and enlightening, and also so hard if we're working against like, especially with attachment sort of wounding, which I had, and trauma from my own past. It was like, what am I doing here? How do I work this? And I think the most beautiful thing was through my work. And when I finally graduated and started doing the work, I felt like I had moved through so much of my own healing. And I do think I can meet clients in their wounds and not be afraid of them and not be like, ooh, this is too much. I'm like, bring it. And also, I'm not like, I feel sorry for you. I am very much like, I am with you. I know this is hard. And I do feel like I can meet clients really well in those painful transitions, with all of it in those places, because I feel like I've moved through it in my own way.
Yeah.
And I'd move through it again. Sometimes transitions in life take us through those places again. So I do feel like it. And it's not because I studied so much or I'm shiny. It's because when we move through the healing process ourselves, we know what it's like. And it's just like, we can just meet folks where they're at and not judge them, not think we're better than them, just be in it with them.
Right.
I don't know if that resonates with you, but
yeah, sure does. And you are really highlighting like the difference between sympathy and empathy, right?
Totally. I talk about this with my clients and I feel it too. Someone's like, oh, like kind of feels sorry for you. You're like, run the other way, but if we know the feeling of empathy. We know when someone's not judging us. We can feel it in our bodies. We feel it in our bodies when someone's with us. And I think that's part of having the experience of some sort of thread of knowing in our own bodies as clinicians, as therapists, So we mirror each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think, before we hopped on, I was talking a little bit about that with you in the sense of like, I just want to have these casual conversations with my therapist friends and family and just talk about our lives and our work and just see what comes up. And I'm lucky to have like amazing like people in my life, such as you, to like just come on and let's just chat a little bit and like let's see where this goes. A couple things when you were talking, I like to jot some notes down. So I similarly, like I didn't finish my doctorate till I was like in my mid 30s. And
I
yeah,
love that.
and it took a while for me to like get into school, get through school. I mean, I was in school for 9 years, and it's just like a really long, hard process. I mean, there are, some wonderful things along the way. I mean, why do it if there's not that? But yeah, I think at the time, like, I didn't really think about like, oh, mid 30s, like, what does that mean for me as like my identity and things like that? And I didn't really think about that. I think I was so like focused with like the blinders on of like just plow through school and like get through school, and not until like I was out and I was like, oh, there are birds. Like did I realize like, oh, like I really want to like be in a relationship, and thought about children and those kinds of things. But like, school and figuring out like who you are and who you want to be, like that takes some time. And, I'm lucky that like I was able to like figure it all out, but it wasn't like this neat, straight, rainbowy path, right? And I think it's important to talk about that because I don't want there to be a misconception about like me or, other people in the field that like you just, go to school and go to more school and then you like, pop out and you're all set. It doesn't like, it doesn't always like happen that way. So I appreciate your story.
Sarah, and as you say that, like, I love that because when we're in school, it's hard. Most folks in their early 30s, mid 30s, at my age, most of my friends were like, raising kids, and they were they had a different life. Right. And so I think it's pretty cool to start your career again in your 30s, and you're going to have a different feeling of what your life is. And then when you graduate, I graduated at 37, 36.
Same.
It's like, okay, this is a different start than when I'm 25. It's like a different phase of life. It's a different wisdom we hold, but that's why I love folks who have second careers. There's a different, or who take a while too. It just doesn't matter. But it's like when we graduate, but we have a different frame of mind, a different body, a different set of wisdom that we're coming in, especially as clinicians, and listeners. And
yeah. Look at you highlighting the wise body, the title of the podcast. Well done. No, you didn't even mean to. You were like, the wisdom our body holds. I'm like, that is what the podcast is all about. And that's why I
totally
wise body. Yeah. Yeah. Our body knows, right? Like we feel it. Yeah.
Our bodies know. Yeah. As a trauma clinician, I do so much work in trauma and eating disorders and together too. But like, our bodies hold things, our bodies know, like they're so amazing. And when we can guide folks towards their bodies, it's like so much new information, if we give it a chance, can come up, or old information that we always knew we didn't pay attention to. So that goes with us. Like when we graduate, when we go back to school in our 30s or 40s or 50s, however, we hold a different level of wisdom in our bodies because of what we've survived and went through,
Yeah. Oh, I just want to put a note in here, a word, if I can, to those clients who, may tell us that like, oh, if I go back to treatment, this is my third time, fourth time, like I've failed. I'm back to step one again. Right. And like my response to that is always, there's absolutely no way. Like this is a myth that I talk about in another episode. I, like to debunk these myths because I think there are so many about eating disorders, and that's why they're so misunderstood. But, that is one that I hear so much, that like, oh, I've failed if I have to go back and into treatment? And my answer to that is like, that defies science. Like, you are not the person that you were. Like, it's been 3 years. Think about what you've gone through in 3 years. And not only that, like, if you've gone through treatment, you are forever changed, and you know more about what to expect. You know more what to expect, not only of like treatment, but to expect of you in the process of treatment. So there's no like way that you are, regressed, that you are in some way starting from nothing. You have all this knowledge built up, right? And like, you hold that in your body, it will remember, and you're starting from that place.
I see that all the time too with folks who go, like my clients who go in and out of treatment. I feel like they're going to have a totally different treatment experience at 25 than they did at possibly 19 or 20. They are in a new body and their wisdom is different. And honestly, folks who go back, they have a better chance of recovery sometimes because they're more aware, they're less triggered possibly. There's something that's like they know the drill now and they might have a better chance. And you and I don't know if you were talking about it in this time or right before we were recording, but like healing is not linear, but we're not the same body that we were a year ago, 5 months ago, 10 years ago. And that way healing shifts as we age, or even a month later, that healing will shift a little bit. And I like when folks say there's failure because they're going backwards or going back into treatment. I'm just like, no, it's actually success. It's a good thing,
Yeah.
So sure. I don't know. I'm feeling what you're saying. I love it.
Good. Yeah. And we're not trying to like, be Pollyanna and put like this positive twist on something that isn't positive. It really is, although it's hard, it's sometimes a good thing, and it's what's needed maybe to go back into treatment.
That's right.
Can I go back to like question number one? So about your story of like, in this evolution of being in this world of theater, and then, this path you took towards becoming a therapist. And I don't know if you've been asked this before, but I feel like talking about this maybe begs the question of like, do you see any similarities in these two worlds of like theater and therapy? Not that you are acting as a therapist, because I experience you as like one of the most authentic, real people ever. But I'm just wondering if like, how did you experience any similarities if you did?
So there's a modality, psychodrama, which I don't know if you were in my training, but there's this fabulous teacher in Boulder, Karen Drucker, right? Karen's,
I've already asked her.
And when I was working in an sort of treatment center, they wanted us to do psychodrama training. And that work is so amazing. It's parts work. It's embodied parts work, right? So it's somatic, but it's also, we get to play out different parts of ourselves, and we get to talk to ourselves, those different parts, or play them out, or we could pick objects in the space that can represent somebody in our life we want to talk to. And for me, playing those situations out feel like theater to me in that way. And it's not rehearsing. It's really just raw. Actually, it is kind of like a rehearsal, because rehearsals can be very raw, and hopefully they are when folks are beginning, but this is how it is, like raw parts work. Sometimes one of my mentors, Katie Asmus, is another amazing trauma wilderness therapist. She interviews parts. And so I ask my clients, can you embody this part? And it could be their eating disorder part. And I'm like, how long have you been around? What are you most afraid of? And we get to put the part central so that you can really listen to what the part wants from somebody, right? And just by separating it, like bringing some mindfulness and separating that part, is very theatrical. And it also gives folks oftentimes I hear like, oh, my brain hates me. Oh, my brain doesn't want me to eat. I'm like, wait a second, that's not your brain. This is parts work. It's like, that's your eating disorder speaking, right? And it's a lot of the work is then understanding that as well. But that very much resembles the theater world to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you find that.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned psychodrama, I was like, oh, every time I talk about psychodrama, I say it is the most powerful work. To me, it feels like the most powerful like form of therapy. And I mean, there wasn't a class of Karens that I didn't walk out crying. There was never a night.
Oh, yeah.
There was never a Friday night. And I remember coming home to my husband and I'm like, we cannot have any plans on these every other Fridays because I'm a total dish rag. It's so much emotional work.
It's
And it
tender.
goes
It's tender
so
work.
deep. It's so involved
Engaging.
and you're, so vulnerable. And I remember, that cohort of just like, how close ultimately you become because you're sharing like the deepest parts of yourself that like I might not, like you were saying, might not even known was even there. Yeah, it's super, super wonderful. And I have asked Karen to come on. She said yes. So I'm excited to have her.
She's amazing. And I'm glad she's going to be on here. She has so much experience too.
Yeah, same. Me too. Well, thank you for that answer. That makes a lot of sense to me. So then what led you to eating disorders? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I work with victims of and survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence for the first 4 years of my career as a licensed professional counselor. And I wanted to just know a different world. I just wanted to know a little bit more. And I didn't know it. Like, working with eating disorders really changed me in a way because I didn't know that I never got help. I never knew there was help out there for eating disorders before I got into the therapy world. So for me, I was in my own level of recovery and never even knew that I was actually in recovery. So it was like I had survived an eating disorder and I was really drawn to somatic work. I do a lot of body-centered work and helping folks kind of with body literacy. And oftentimes I would meet folks who were sort of blocked in that way. And so I thought working in eating disorders is all like a lot of it is body and body awareness and how you feel about your body and what are you putting in your body. And so I applied and I got a job and it really changed me. It taught me a lot and humbled a lot, especially around really bodies and talking about bodies, especially around, I'm very much a social justice, identity, culture oriented psychotherapist. And folks don't talk about bodies, right? And so for me, this is an identity piece, is our bodies, right? Our bodies are an identity and it affects how we walk in this world. And oftentimes folks have eating disorders when, let's say they have body dysphoria, not just dysmorphia, but dysphoria when they might feel like they're in the wrong gender or they want to express in a certain way. So there's so much identity overlap with bodies that I really ended up loving it in that way. That's how I got there and loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, layered and complex and can sometimes be like so much to explore, which, just my bias as an eating disorder therapist can be really exciting and exhilarating, being able to, as we say, like peel back the onion, right? And cover all these pieces of someone that maybe were either not intentionally ignored or forgotten, but just sort of in the dark. And one of those pieces could be like just not feeling any connection to our body and being totally disembodied. And I mean, I feel like that was me for years, especially in grad school and like, being an anxious grad student and just being like, someone put it to me this way, we're just like heads, going from meeting to meeting or class to class. And like, I was. I mean, I fueled my body, but like, I didn't really ever slow down. I didn't really think about my body. I just kind of used it to like, like as a vehicle just to get me through school. And I think, maybe with age kind of catching up to me and like having an achy back and having had 2 kids, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a body there. There is a body there.
There's a body.
And it needs to be tended to and not forgotten. And eating disorders tend to do that, like numb and distract and avoid from feeling in our bodies.
I think also, like, I think about trauma and the intersection, if I could even weave that in here, is like for survivors of trauma, whether it's ongoing developmental trauma or a one-time trauma that happened to them, cutting off from our bodies is actually really smart. It's brilliant that our bodies cut off, And then, of course, working with eating disorders, of course, there's going to be a disconnection between knowing what our hunger cues, what our full cues are, whether we want to listen to or not, right? And so our body, and as trauma survivors as well, our bodies start to remind us, or always have, like, symptoms can get worse or something might happen. And so it's like, how do we start to connect back into our bodies in a safe way, work the trauma, and also at the same time in that intersection with recovery and food, like, how do we put food in our body? Can we feel it? And bringing mindfulness to our bodies again, is that safe? I love that intersection together as a safe way of feeling into bodies again when they're before, or still it's inherently unsafe to be in a body for survivors. So I love that intersection. I don't love that intersection. I enjoy working with that intersection because it's really beautiful work to help folks come back in and just safely feel, am I hungry? Am I full? Is it safe to eat? What is it doing to my body to eat or not eat, or do something with the food?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are such great questions and could maybe even fill a therapeutic hour, right?
Oh, yeah, easy.
And, as you were talking, I was thinking about something else, which is sometimes people feel a certain pain or symptom in their body, that might be a clue of something, right? Like that we hold this pain in certain parts of our body. So that somatic work is, really important. And maybe, I don't know if it's not for everyone, is it a safer place to begin? But like, even ask that question, which I know we often do, like, where do you feel that in your body? I know that question has almost become like, and how does that make you feel? A very common question in eating disorders. But I think it's really important because, I know I'm like mocking that question of like, how does that make you feel? But like, that has a place actually, right? Because if we're not talking about our feelings, if we're not talking about our bodies and where we feel things, that might be the first time someone has asked, like, where do you feel that in your body? Or actually, like, how did that interaction just make you feel? Like, sometimes we, need someone to ask that question to know that we feel something about it.
100%. And even in trauma therapy, it's like goes even a step further to, what are you noticing in your body? Where do you feel it? And then also the next guidance is stay with that. Keep staying with it. And part of that work is to let our bodies move it in a way that it didn't get to do maybe when something happened to us years ago or a year ago, whenever. But staying with it is it's like another level of it. So I think I love what you're saying, Sarah, because it's like some people don't even know that they can, I can feel it in my body. Oh, I don't know where it is actually. I just thought it was anxiety. Oh, it's in my chest. Oh, it's actually grief. Like it takes a couple of questions to get deeper. And so we need to ask that question, even though some of my clients eye roll when I ask that question. They're like, oh, Kate, that's such a therapist question. But and then they go there and we get somewhere really beautiful and deep and healing,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And that's nice that, your clients trust you, right? To be able to do that, that you have and create that safe place. So that speaks to how you are as a therapist in person. That's awesome. So I think maybe we have time for a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
And I love how you were talking about this complex intersection of trauma, complex PTSD, eating disorders, and coping. Mm-hmm. What keeps you in this field? What keeps you doing this work?
In my experience of the hardest places that I was in, people didn't want to be there with me. And I don't blame them. It's really hard to be with someone when they're really struggling and they can't get out. And so for me, I feel like it's an honor to be there with folks and know what to do and meet them where they are when they're in really dark, dark places or hard places or challenging times or confusing times. I love organically to be with folks there. Like, I'd rather be there than talk about the weather. Like, that is where I run. And I really need some help. And with that being said, in my own healing journey, it used to be all about me. Like, I have to feel better. I have to be better. And then once I started, I'm always healing and I always will be. But once I hit a certain place, I was able to take care of other people. I was able to organically see a bigger picture. I was able to see outside of my own bubble. And I think that work to help folks get to that, they start to become organically altruistic in terms of their path. I see it happen so often through the healing process. And I think, I don't know, I think that's kind of what we need right now. Or like the more folks we can have to be like, how you doing? Are you okay? Whether they're therapists or just like talking to someone who, you're in passing. I think the more that can pass along, that's sort of our quiet rebellion against like what is actually happening in our lives, right? Because what is happening on a bigger scene, like at least for me and most folks that I'm around, we want to retreat. We're scared. It's really scary. It's going, especially based on our identities, right? And then it's like, but the more folks can feel a little bit better just for a beat, or not even better, okay with what's happening, normalized in what's happening as a human experience, the more they can kind of pass it on and spread it. And I really believe in that.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that sounds cheesy, but I really feel like that.
No, I don't think that's cheesy at all. I'm thinking about what Margot Main said in our interview. She sometimes gets asked, I think, the question of like, what should I do? What should I become? And her answer is, help people. And if you help people, like, you can't go wrong and you won't feel bad. You won't feel bad about it. And I love that. And I think you also speak to this notion, which is when you ask that question of like, how are you feeling? And not just like, oh, I'm fine. And there's someone that I know who's also another therapist, and she thinks we need to replace the question with, how are you, with how's your mental health? And I love that because
I agree. I love that.
It just shows like, actually, I like care and I really want to know and like really know, like, how are you? It's another deeper level of caring, right? By asking it that way.
That's right.
So just this idea of you're not alone and I really care about how you're doing, I think, absolutely can, like you're saying, can go such a long way for sure.
It really can, especially, I don't know about you, Sarah, but like in the hardest times in my life, like just somebody just, how's it going? Those little questions, how are you doing today? It's like, oh, it pulls us outside of ourselves. And like, those are the little things I think that, normalizing and making or helping folks feel okay in what they're experiencing. So those are the moments that we can pass along and they help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I could go on and on. I just want to end with one more if you have the time. So this has become like one of my favorite questions to ask on the podcast, which is, what is your most frequently asked question and how do you answer it?
I was thinking about this. You passed along this question earlier. And I think the thing that blows my mind the most are the amount of folks with binge eating disorder who still don't believe that binge eating disorder is a real thing. Is this real? They always ask, is this really real? I'm just being lazy. I could do better. I failed because I had a binge. It's just like such a different way of looking at it. And also folks with binge eating disorder often get overlooked, I think, in treatment, or maybe don't even think they deserve treatment. There's so much about that. So I get that question so many times from my clients who have that eating disorder, binge eating disorder. And so I often sit with them and I'm like, here we go. Let's pull out the DSM. Let's look at it together. This is a thing, right? Because it's opposite. I can't have control. I'm losing control. It's symbolic binge eating disorder in a lot of ways, right? Or whatever the reason is that it's there. But I think that question sticks out to me. And I hear it come by so many times in my office.
Thank you for saying that and making that known. And it makes me want to sort of explode in a response to that because I have a lot of feelings about this, but I'll just keep it short because I know we need to end. But the first is that binge eating disorder wasn't added to the DSM until the 5th text revision. And then therefore insurance companies didn't, recognize it as a problem or an issue, and then therefore wouldn't pay maybe for treatment for someone with it. So it wasn't even like diagnosable. So it kind of makes sense that, our clients question, is this really a problem? Am I making this up? There's so much
making it up.
Stigma, right, associated with binge eating disorder that like, oh, it should just be something that I can control. And like, well, hallmark feature of binge eating disorder is that you can't control it, right? Like you would if you could. And so like layers and layers of shame associated with it is so huge. And I know before we hopped on here, I mentioned kind of in a tangent that I got a notification of like a discount for GLP-1 medication and like really, really low price, like very affordable, and not meaning it's not like hundreds of thousands of dollars that maybe it once was hundreds of dollars, but I mean, it was like 2-digit numbers, which, you know, I know a lot of people don't have a lot of extra money to spend on anything right now, but like just this push, right? Like even that, like that there's like this discount or a coupon or whatever, just the idea that there's this push, whether you can afford, you know, it or not. I don't have a lot of wiggle room in my budget right now, but just that appeal of, hey, here's our discounted rate. It's a very marketable tool, right? To be able to say, we can give this to you at a very low price at a discount, like it is within your reach. It makes you think, is this something that I need if it's being pushed so hard? And I think it is sending this message that it's not okay to be a certain weight, or if you think you are in a body that you don't like, there, you know, that you need to fix it and that this is the way to do it. So we are still bombarded with these messages that it's not okay to be in the body that you're in, whether it's a bigger body or not. If you reject it and you want to do something about it, then this is, you know, in a very marketable way, providing some solution, which is, I think, really scary. And I think is coming up a lot in our field of eating disorders. But here's what I'm hearing from you. And I think, you know, how we think about this is just like that. We have to be careful with how we think about GLP-1s and with eating disorders, and that it's not this like one size fits all solution, and that, you know, it could put some people at great risk. And also, you know, taking the medication may mimic some of the symptoms of an eating disorder, right? Suppressing appetite, you know, some GI issues. It's a whole nother podcast episode for sure. But thank you for bringing it up. And thank you for talking about binge eating and how some of our clients with binge eating feel like they have to question it and feel maybe very invalidated for having the diagnosis. And I think it's important that we help people with binge eating disorder, like, know that this is a very real thing, and hopefully work on, if there's shame and guilt coming up, to really focus on that, work on that.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen in this week. I'm so glad you're here with me as we learn more from our wise bodies and about eating disorder recovery. For more, follow me on social media, and please share the Wise Body podcast with your friends. Lastly, if you're interested in a free client consultation, please reach out on drhughes.com. And remember, always take care of yourself and your temple. See you next time on the Wise Body podcast.